I'm Al Hunt.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to the Jets, who are in the market for a new QB, have you considered Marco Rubio?
Go and you're going to
That's not good.
They don't make receivers in Iowa.
Happy National Ice Cream Pie Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, Scott's upshot and Hillary's download. But first, the Donald's rightward pull. Trump's new immigration plan says to end the so-called birthright citizenship guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment. Cue the reaction. Republican candidates have been weighing in on both sides of the issue, including Rick Perry and Marco Rubio, who both said today that they are not in favor of repealing that particular portion of our founding document. Al, how big a problem is Donald Trump's position on immigration for the Republican Party politically?
It could be humongous, John. I think Republicans are scared because this guy sets an agenda, and he sticks with the agenda. I just want to say, I've covered a lot of this stuff. I've seen some loony ideas. Newt Gingrich's space colonies. I saw a Democratic candidate hold up a rat one time in a New Hampshire debate. This may be the most fraudulent proposal I have ever seen. The birthright, he wants to repeal the 14th Amendment, which is the Dred Scott decision.
Yeah.
If government run amok, send government agents into maternity wards, and it would cost $600 billion plus, bankrupt the government. This is a problem Republicans have to deal with.
But here's the thing about this plan, Al. I think one thing you got to say for Donald Trump is he's now decided he's going to play by the establishment's rules to some extent. This is a detailed plan. It's not, this is not, you might think it's unworkable, and I obviously think it's not good policy, but it's forcing Republicans to react. And I think that's an interesting thing because none of the other ones have this level of detail on this rather important issue in the Republican Party.
Well, you're right about that, except it's so loony, it's so crazy, it's so unworkable, it's so bad. It's not just a policy. You might disagree with a health care proposal, for instance. This is $600 billion to deport 11 million people. Do you know that's how many people live in Ohio? That's just crazy.
Well, let's be clear on the birthright citizenship thing today. I want to do the scorecard here.
Yep.
Bobby Jindal agrees with Donald Trump. End it. Lindsey Graham, amazingly, who thinks the rest of the plan is pretty cuckoo, he agrees that there should be no birthright citizenship. We got Rick Santorum, who previously thought that was the case. And then we got Scott Walker, who had some fuzziness on this yesterday, but now is basically on the opposite side of Trump. Marco Rubio, as we said, Rick Perry, as we said. Carly Fiorina, Jeb Bush very forcefully said he's not for it. Huckabee and Kasich previously have said that they're not for this. So that's a pretty bright line in the party. And I have to say, it's at least, I think, from the Republican political standpoint, it's encouraging that so many of these characters are coming out against Trump on this issue, that they recognize the political suicide that it would be to go into a general election with this albatross attached to their back.
Absolutely. This could be a gift for Jeb Bush. Right. It really could be. He's been dull. He's been, if he gets forceful, he can't equivocate. He's got to keep going the way he started, and it really could be a gift.
I totally agree. And I think, that, again, it's a useful function that Trump is serving in that sense.
Yes.
Not intentionally or not intentionally. It's useful in that it's forcing these people to take sides on some rather really big issues that really matter a lot. It's going to be interesting, I think, Al, going forward, if Trump does the same thing on other areas of policy that he did on this. That will be fascinating to see how they all have to then react to Trump, or how many of them are going to try to get ahead of Trump on some of these policy issues just so they don't have to do that.
And how it adds up.
Yes, absolutely right. Okay, let's move on. Here are 4 timeless words. No sleep till Brooklyn, specifically Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where today Scott Walker announced a plan to change the way Americans get their health care. He was at the Cass Screw Machine Products place today, and he revealed this plan. There are 4 big highlights to it, Al. I said place there. I'm sure that's not actually what it's called. Repealing Obamacare, no big surprise there. He says he's going to give age-based tax credits, not based on income level. You're going to get tax credits if you're uninsured, if you're on the older side. No individual mandate, obviously a huge thing for Republicans. He's going to let people buy insurance across state lines, and then he's going to reduce regulations in various unspecified ways. We could talk about the Medicaid parts of this, too, if you want. But first, just at the basic level, good policy, good politics for Scott Walker on this issue.
I think the politics are good for him, John, and particularly the primary politics, for a couple reasons. Number one, it's the most comprehensive health care plan yet from the GOP side. And there's been a lot of criticism of that. Secondly, Scott Walker has been portrayed as a one-trick pony. He's a union basher. Right. This broadens that, and he needed it this time. The policy probably is more problematic. Medicare isn't he doesn't even touch on Medicare. That's the biggest part of health care. No cost. We don't know what the cost would be. Some of it's incredibly complicated.
Right.
Stuff about pre-existing conditions are much more complicated. And, you know, for all the criticism of the Affordable Health Care Act, 15.8 million people are insured today who weren't 2 years ago. Let's see how Walker's plan stacks up with that. So, but I think short-term politics pretty good.
Well, look, he's going to get a lot of credit from some people for being this specific. Right. And like, again, there are holes in this, and there are blank spots, there are things we don't know. But he has done something, as you point out, that he's a first among Republican presidential candidates. Come out with a big, bold plan with a lot of specifics. Marco Rubio, who wrote about his health care plan today in Politico, that he had previously issued a health care proposal that was very bare bones, not very well sketched out. This is much more detailed. I do think that you're right about the fact that the fact there's no price tag attached and the fact that he doesn't talk about Medicare. Those are two issues which are both big policy problems, but they also create political problems because he's eventually going to have to talk about them. He hasn't done it yet.
You're right, John. But this is the basic architecture that other Republicans will have to follow. Right. Some of the details will be different, but my guess is that he's sort of set the predicate for this debate with this plan today.
I do not understand this thing, and a lot of Republicans put this forward, but I do not understand the logic behind nationalizing the insurance market and saying, you know, let people buy across state lines, and then also at the same time talking about the virtue of federalism and having states get involved, especially on his Medicaid piece. He's got all kinds of state level, breaking into a lot of little programs, letting states have a lot of discretion over how it's administered in a lot of ways, and yet at the same time arguing for a big national insurance market. I don't get how those two things jibe.
Well, particularly on the state stuff, particularly since so many of the insurers are regional insurers.
Right.
So I think there are holes in this. There are holes in Obamacare. Yeah. Look, health care, everybody is against whatever people propose, but they want changes. So I give Walker credit, though. I think he has stepped up.
I'll tell you who I think is going to have a field day with this proposal is Ted Cruz, who I think is going to be when he gets around to coming out with what his Obamacare alternative is. He is going to take a much more radical posture, and it's going to be able to give him a place where he can get further to Scott Walker's right, which is going to be a problem for Walker down the line.
As a semi-wise man, namely me, wrote today, Ted Cruz is the most underrated candidate in the Republican field.
Wow. I wouldn't say you're semi-wise, Al. You're 100% wise. All right. If you spend a lot of your time reading emails in the bathroom, you might have something in common with Hillary Clinton. That is a strange thing to say, but there's this story in the Daily Mail today, Al, about how Platte River Systems, the company that did the backups for Hillary Clinton's email private server, is a little mom and pop shop out in Denver that had its backup server in their bathroom in this apartment where they ran the server out of. The thing I want to talk to you about is that how this email thing relates to Hillary Clinton's political prospects, where it really matters. In places like Iowa and places like New Hampshire, I wrote a story on BloombergPolitics.com after spending a few days with Hillary Clinton in Iowa, saying she's doing a lot of things right in Iowa, a lot of things better than she did in 2008, but this email thing is still an overhang for her to a degree that she wants to deny. She says real voters aren't paying attention. I hear a lot of real voters who are starting to worry about it. What do you think about this question? How much is the email matter for Hillary Clinton just a chattering class thing and a Sulla corridor thing, or how much is it really something in the early states that's starting to take a toll on her?
Well, John, you captured that other part. I mean, I've heard a pervasive, maybe a slight exaggeration, but a lot of worry among professional Democratic politicians. I don't think the Joe Biden thing would be as hot as it is today if it weren't for this. But you captured those rank-and-file Iowans, including people who said, I want to vote for her, but I don't want to revisit this stuff again. So she's treating this as a legal problem by and large. Yes. She better start treating it as a political problem.
I think it's just crazy on her part. You know, she said, I was at the fair with her and she did this media availability and she was asked about it. She says, no one brings this up in my town halls. No one brings it up in my meetings. And I you know, there's just a big difference. Mark and I talked about this on the show a little yesterday. There's a big difference between what people will say to a politician's face versus what they're privately worried about. And I found with elite Democrats and with rank-and-file Democrats, it's not they think she's corrupt necessarily. Many of them want to vote for her, but they're worried about what this might do to her general election viability. And so they are asking questions. They think FBI, they hear classified, they think this might be a problem. How big a problem is this? And that creates all kinds of space for Joe Biden or Al Gore if he decided to get in, and for Bernie Sanders, in fact, I think.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And she is not handling it. You pointed out she's running a very good campaign in Iowa, much better than she did 8 years ago. But this is more like, this is deja vu. This is the way the Clintons did it before.
In denial, in the bunker, trying to pretend.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. It's not a big deal. I think it's crazy if she continues to think that these things are in some way isolated. People are hearing it, and people are worried about her baggage as a general thing. They want to win in 2016, and they're worried about this could be another piece of baggage that weighs her down in what's going to be a very competitive general election.
Calling John Podesta, you better take over.
Okay. In the world of sports, Lance Armstrong is still a dirty liar. Tom Brady is still a foul cheat. And the National Labor Relations Board has declined to rule on whether the heroic Northwestern football players can qualify as employees who can unionize. This NLRB ruling, Al, basically says that they're not voting against it and they're not voting for it. They're saying it would be too destabilizing if we granted union status to these college football players at my alma mater who are trying to change the nature of how college sports works. And so by taking a pass, they're not doing anything. My question for you is that the death knell of the move towards professionalization in college sports? And if it is the death knell, is that a good or bad thing?
John, first of all, bad cases make bad laws. And to talk about professionalization of sports and pick the Northwestern football team, they'd have been better off picking the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Oh!
I mean, really, seriously.
Oh, Al!
But, on the
cut me to the quick, my friend.
You don't deny it, though.
No, I don't deny it.
On the larger question, this is, the idea that this is not a professionalization of college sports anyway. Right. It's all about money. It's all about professional. There are schools, Northwestern being one of them, my alma mater, Duke, that really do have student athletes. They are in the minority.
You're going to mention that your alma mater is Wake Forest?
I did, Wake Forest, yeah.
All right, thank you for doing that. I think that the basis of this case was always very strong, and that this is a profit-making venture, college football. And the fact that the college football and college sports in general, the fact that these students do not have the kind of protections that professional players have, protections in terms of health care and other things, right? The fact that it's crime, I think, and I think there's a lot of intellectual validity to doing what they were trying to do. You saw the heads of all the major athletic conferences cheering the NLRB for this ruling. And I tell you, that is the thing. You look at that and you say, okay, that is the equivalent of the mafia, a bunch of mafiosos cheering the cancellation of the organized crime task force. That tells you everything you need to be told about the effect of this thing. I do not know if it's the death knell, though, because I think that the logic of this is ineluctable in some ways, and it's going to be, as college sports makes more and more money, this is where we're going to end up one way or the other. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, you're right. It's a financial racket. And every single league plays this. That's why they've rescheduled things. They've done away with old rivalries. It has to do with money. And ultimately, they're going to have to pay the price for that, whether it's this way or whether it's some other way, John. I
also think on the part of the NLRB, it's kind of a craven decision. It's like, we're not going to rule on the intellectual merits here. What we're just going to say is, boy, this would cause chaos, and chaos would be disruptive. And so, therefore, we're going to take a pass on it and essentially pocket veto the thing. It seems cowardly to me. That's what the NLRB should be for, is to rule on the merits and not rule on, well, will it create disruption in the system? That's what it's designed to do, is create disruption in the system. I think they were very, very cowardly and craven in not addressing this thing on its merits, on whether it made sense or not.
Yep, but it's not going to go away.
Okay, all right. Coming up, the pride of Iowa, former Senator Tom Harkin, but sadly no steak, no fries, and no pork chops on sticks. We will be right back. While Mark and I were out in Des Moines for the Iowa State Fair, I had a chance to talk with former Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, who's basically a Kardashian in the Hawkeye State. He had just endorsed Hillary Clinton, so I asked him what made her campaign this time around different than her ill-fated bid in 2008.
In 2008, the Clinton campaign was like I call a 40,000-foot bombing run over Iowa. And Obama was down in the weeds. This year, Hillary is down in the weeds. She is personally involved. The first 2 or 3 times she came to Iowa, she went to small towns and rural areas, not Des Moines and Cedar Rapids. And that sent a powerful signal. So she's very personally involved this year. She wasn't And the organization that they've set up in Iowa, I got to say, is one of the best I've ever seen.
You think it is as good as the Obama operation from 2008?
It is.
It is.
Well, I think a lot of the Obama people are in this organization.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think that you know, I watched her here at the fair with you.
Yeah.
I want to compliment you on your hat, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like,
it was cloudy today, so I didn't wear it.
But I thought to myself, I got to ask Harkin where he got that hat because I want one of those. You know, I watched her try to get through this fair in the hour and a half she spent here yesterday, and I felt sympathy for her in a way, because no matter how much she tries at an event like this to get down low and meet people, between the security she has, the media that follows her, the celebrity that attends her, it is just hard for her to be a normal candidate. How does she get over that?
Well, she has. I was with her Saturday, and as the crowd's question, she found people to talk to. A woman with a daughter who had a disability, another woman who was involved in some business endeavors, she had a chance to at least talk to people in that crush of a crowd. But let me tell you something else. I've known that Hillary has come to Iowa several times, not in Des Moines, but in little towns, and had little meetings that a lot of the press don't even know about.
I saw her up at the Wing Ding dinner up in Clear Lake the night before she came to the fair. She gave, I thought, a very strong speech, a partisan speech, but a better speech than I saw her give at any of the time in 2007 when she was running. But she also made a couple jokes there about her email. The Snapchat joke about how things disappear. She was very combative on that front. Do you think that's the right tone for her to strike on this subject?
First of all, let me tell you, I do get around the state quite a bit. I have not heard one time anyone ever asked me about these emails. They talked to me about the economy, they talked to me about education and costs of college for their kids, opportunity, you know, of course agriculture, because I'm in an agricultural state. I am honest with you, I have never heard one person, one Iowan, come up to me and talk to me about these emails. It's just not a factor.
So do you regard it as a distraction, as a partisan thing, as a triviality, or do you think there are serious issues at stake?
No, I don't think there's a serious issue with these emails at all. I think it's, you know, the Republicans have nothing else right now. They're trying to gin up whatever they can. Remember Whitewater? Remember how they tried to gin that up?
I remember.
Oh yeah, they just feel they got to pin something on her. But there's nothing there. And they are afraid. They're afraid of Hillary being our nominee. They really are. Because I served with Hillary in the Senate. And I served on the committee with her. And I saw her up close working. And her ability to fight for families and kids, but the other ability she has, and that is to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans to get things done. She's very good at that, and we need that in Washington. We need more of that.
But do you think, you know, yesterday there was some complaint here among some Democrats that I heard that she did not get up and do the soapbox this year? She did it back in 2007. She didn't do it this time around. Do you think she should have done that?
No. Barack Obama never did it in either one of his campaigns. I think a lot of that's overblown.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And you, Mr. Iowa, saying the soapbox is overblown. Don't tell the Des Moines Register.
I used to do it all the time. It's fine. It's fun. But again, if I were running like that, I'd be more interested in going out and just listening to people and talking to people rather than getting on your soapbox.
So to speak.
So to speak.
You know, the guy who did the soapbox on Saturday was, who's running against her, is Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
He had a huge crowd.
Sure.
Marched right up here down Grand Avenue with a giant phalanx of people behind him. What do you think of Sanders' potential in Iowa, that kind of candidate? Again, not, you know, just what, do you think he has a chance to catch fire here?
Well, obviously he has caught fire here and other places too. Look, I love Bernie Sanders. He was also on my committee in the Senate. He and Jane are personal friends of mine. I called him earlier and told him I was going to endorse Hillary. He understood that. I think Bernie is providing not only a valuable service to the Democratic Party, but I think to our country, because he's gotten the attention of talking about the growing inequality in our country. And I believe that is the issue of our time. The real question is, who would be best in the White House to actually get the job done, move the ball down the field in closing that gap? And that's why I think Hillary has more of an ability to do that than anyone that's out there right now.
Do you think he poses a significant political threat to her?
I don't see that as a political threat. I think it's more of building the kind of constituency that we're going to need in the general election.
You ran for president?
Yeah, I tried it once.
1992.
Yeah, some guy by the name of Bill Clinton beat me.
Yeah, you're right.
What happened to him anyway?
I was thinking about that. I wonder if you ever imagined what it would have been like if President Clinton, then candidate Clinton, had not decided to skip the Iowa caucuses because of you, and you guys had to fight it out here in Iowa.
He wouldn't have had a chance.
Tom Harkin, thank you very much. You took great thanks to doing it. Al, I just got to ask you, as the in-house historian and the oldest man I've ever met, have you? Can you remember why did Tom Harkin, besides Bill Clinton, why did Tom Harkin not do better in that 1992 presidential election?
He just never rose above his Iowa roots. I'm a fan. Great champion of disabilities, a guy, a truth teller, and everything else. But he just looked like a local candidate when he got outside of Iowa. Really an interesting interview. And Tom's a straight shooter, but boy, I think he's wrong about no one cares about this issue, as we said earlier.
Totally agree. All right, our thanks to Senator Harkin for doing that interview yesterday. After the break, a simple question. Do you believe in magic? We'll be right back. The Washington Post asked Jeb Bush about Donald Trump's comments on birthright citizenship. Bush replied, quote, "There are like 10 things I would change in the Constitution with a magic wand," end quote. Ha, of course. Everyone knows about Jeb Bush's history with sorcery. Oh, wait, you're not familiar with that story? Well, let us take you through the classic children's tale of Jeb Bush and the magic wand.
Once upon a time, in a faraway place, lived a boy who dreamed nightly of the presidential race. His name was Jeb Bush, and he wanted people to believe. So he set off with his magic wand and some tricks up his sleeve. By flicking his enchanted scepter one way or another, he made people forget about his ties to his brother. The Iraq War? No problem. This trick's one to admire. He said abracadabra and adios to the quagmire. Jeb's wizardly tool turned him into a regular Machiavelli. That's how he handled that tough interview with Fox's Megyn Kelly. What would he have done if he'd known then what he now knew? Jeb waved his magic baton and changed Megyn's point of view. Those hardline conservatives who despised Common Core, with a bewitching incantation, Jeb made them no more. He was proud to be a Bush, but the association brought blame. So Jeb indulged in some sorcery and disappeared his surname. But there was one daunting presence that Jeb couldn't handle, who grew stronger and stronger with each new putative scandal. In Iowa and New Hampshire, his poll ratings did bump. Jeb waved and waved his wand, but he couldn't wipe out Trump. Then just before the caucus, at the 11th hour, Jeb cried out, "Eureka!" and snuck into Trump Tower. Creeping up on the frontrunner in his opulent lair, Jeb reared back and shot a spell at the Donald's hair. The coiffure flew away, and Trump gave a hoot. Then he melted, leaving behind just an empty Brioni suit. Jeb cradled his wand, his secret artillery, and started dreaming up voodoo for his next target, Hillary.
Abracadabra. We'll be right back. We are live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com, but we're on the tube twice a day at 5 and at 8. Until tomorrow, sayonara.